Hello, everybody, and welcome to one of what will probably end up being many Violet Flame Studio podcasts. I have with me today Mr. Philip Rice, and we're going to be discussing the subject of video games as a tool of radical transformation, because it's come to a lot of people's attention that these new modern platforms are becoming more and more popular. We're getting more and more users every day, pretty much. I think we're at about 3.32 billion consumers of digital products, video games specifically, worldwide, and that is growing. And most of us have already noticed that games are a transcendental vehicle for storytelling. And there's a lot of reasons why that is, and we'll get into that throughout this podcast. Phil, do you want to give a brief introduction into kind of like what's sparked your interest in this project particularly? And then I'll give a little bit of insight into kind of why and what we're doing and why it's relevant to what we're talking about.
Thank you. So I have a background in music teaching, and so I've worked with a lot of young people. At least close to 1,000, and I've worked in many schools, and I've seen how influential young minds are, and that includes older teenagers as well. I'm also I've been an avid gamer in my life as well, in the sense that I like getting lost in a good story. I'm not much of an online multiplayer kind of person. I like a good sort of like take my own time sort of like RPG or campaign kind of game. But like John said, the influence, considering the numbers and the proportion of the global population involved in exposing themselves to virtual environments in the form of interactive entertainment, i.e. video games, it cannot be understated how influential that is upon the direction, the sort of the condition and the structures of society and the direction that society is going. And so it's really important, I think, because you know what? People really care about these things. I care about the state of games. There's a lot of games out there that have been dropped that you were hoping that were going to be awesome, and they did it. It's like the Star Wars movie, that recent one, The Force Awakens, the new Disney Star Wars movie that came out those years ago. I went there expecting the magic of childhood and to be reawakened, and it was not there. I walked out of that movie theater going, is it just me? Am I growing up? And I'm like going, once I had a bit of storytelling explained to me about elements of storytelling and these types of things, I kind of started to understand a lot more about myself and how I relate to the content that I consume or I expose myself to, and how it's really important to have a bit of a knowledge base about what you're experiencing, because it's going to influence you, even at a subconscious level, and so as far as my interest goes in this particular project, I also have a background in, a bit of an esoteric scholarship. I like reading about, I'm a meditation teacher and an energy healer and these types of things. And, I really enjoy the practices that I do. I see how there's elements of these practices that are actively being used within the video game environment, i.e., regular repetitious exposure to common themes and patterns forming. Like whether or not you're consciously picking up on patterns, the deeper parts of you are. And when these things are pointed out to people and they have greater knowledge of how these things work, they gather a little bit of immunity to these things. And so knowledge is truly power in this respect, because otherwise you can be taken on a ride that may seem initially like a good time, but long term it may not actually be what you want.
Or turn out to be very good for you at all, in the same way, including something that tastes good but is slowly poisoning you into your diet, you have to develop that same level of discernment, especially now that we're in an age of rapidly moving information streaming past us. You have to be able to qualify the bad from the good, and I think I mean, going back to the original purpose of this conversation, games as a platform for transformation, this is why I've started my studio. You know, this is why I've started the studio, and I say mine now because it is kind of it's being brought into being. But it arose from an observation that I made over years of being a gamer, that this is a profound platform. Video games are a profound platform for changing the way that people think, impressing ideas upon them, exercising or not exercising aspects of the mind and cognition. I also noticed, as many of you will have also, is that like most of the best developers that recognize the strength of these platforms are turning their games into political weapons. And rather than capitalizing on the opportunity to use games as self-development platforms, they just use it as mechanisms to distribute wealth and power around a small group of elite operators who really prioritize metrics that just generate maximum income instead of capitalizing on the user's experience of enjoyment and all the rest of it, or development. So with Violet Flame Studios, our goal is to essentially use the gaming platform to re-empower these degenerating cognitive faculties that have started to diminish and get less exercise since the advent of everybody having a cell phone in their pocket that can outsource all the thinking for them. Again, with the repetitive nature of games, you're re-engaging with the same concepts over and over again, which is a great way to either learn, exercise, or impart information. And those of you who were maybe fans of the Borderlands franchise, who saw the final installment or the most recent installment literally get turned into a woke political weapon, probably started to think, maybe there is more going on in the global gaming community or the elite gaming community than people realize. So I've recognized a profound opportunity to infuse self-development with games, as I believe currently video games potentially offer the best platform for radical transformation of cognition and spirit, you know, because of the ability to tell a story. You know, you can go to a movie when you're feeling down, right? We used to go to a movie and we'd watch a comedy and we'd come out uplifted and feeling great, and you know, you'd forget all your problems, and hey, that's great, that's one thing. But I think what we're doing more and more is like we're being trained to put plasters over our problems, and as we said on the previous discussion we had, we're focusing on the shiny and ignoring the depth, you know, like, and for me that's just missed opportunity for humanity to advance themselves in a way that's truly entertaining and truly immersive, and has the ability to like share diverse cultural experiences that people otherwise would never even get access to. And so that's what we're doing, and predominantly with Violet Flame Studios, we're focusing on exposing players to a diverse range of alternative philosophical systems to give them meaning, or give people a broad range of systems that they can, you know, choose to identify with in their own unique way and pull the best out of each of them, so they can truly feel empowered by what it is that they're doing. So yeah, I mean, I think games are a great delivery system for empowering programming. You know, like we feed people gameplay mechanics that will exercise their ability to recognize patterns, to become more mindful over time through introduction of memory techniques and gameplay, etc., etc. So identifying basically regressing cognitive faculties, and then using the game development industry as a platform to re-empower all these faculties that are slowly withering away.
Well said, brother. And you know, I just want to say too, guys, like, you know, generally speaking, when you're seeking out entertainment, you know, you're looking maybe to have fun, right? And fun acts as a very effective lubricant for messages.
Correct.
And you know, essentially, whether those messages are beneficial for you or not, you know, you're more likely to, your receptivity, or your, you know, you might even call it bioavailability in some ways, or psychological availability to the permeative sort of potential of that message increases because you're relaxed, you've dropped your guard down, and the stuff's coming through. And some stuff, it's like we've played a lot of games and we've talked about the symbolism that's in games, whether it's a fixed image on a wall inside a game environment, whether it's a statue, whether it's a thing that you do, or an archetypical sort of like activity that you perform in the game. There's aspects of you that are seeing those scenes and interpreting them differently than what your conscious mind does. And if you start to wonder why your behavior starts changing, and you notice that your behavior starts changing, it's like, why am I thinking like this differently now all of a sudden? Or why am I changing my preferences or general proclivities and tendencies? It's like, what have I done differently that's influencing me in this way? And so how do we, and something I've discovered on the various pathways I've explored, especially in my present sort of journey through the hermetic initiation process that I practice, is that part of this process is to essentially identify eventually liberate yourself from influences. You're swimming in a soup that's affecting you, but you don't know you're in the soup. And so you become aware of the soup. And this helps you to go, and then you can go, do I want that or do I not want that? Because you start to empower yourself through understanding by being able to be observant.
So like what you said there about just hitting on the platform as a mean delivery system because of the states of consciousness that are cultivated by the players when they're engaging with them, right? Like, so you constantly find yourself in unconscious states of play, which are likened to trance states when you're playing games, because not many games force you to be ever increasingly mindful. Like, there are definitely some out there, like the MOBAs, I think, are really good at doing that, albeit they come with like a lot of cursed game design. But they're really good. Like, for example, I don't really want to name names of big companies, so I won't. But there are games out there that do, I think, have the potential to show people how the experience and the consciousness that they take into the game ends up coming out into their reality. If for example, your tilt in game, you're on tilt in real life. You're doing really good in the game, you're doing really good in real life, and it's all because it comes back to, like you say, that hermetic dictum that the all is mind, and whatever we focus on, whatever we focus our minds on, is what we end up perceiving through the filter of our own individual experience. So when players are engaged with products that have underlying, let's say, political or social agendas that they are unaware of, they are engaging with it, they're in unconscious states of play, and again, they're repeating quite regularly these messages that are there to change the way that they perceive their reality, like for whatever commercial or political reason, usually. So games is basically the one industry that should be regulated heavily, in terms of how I take that back. It probably shouldn't.
Who should regulate it?
Who should regulate it? I mean, my point is like, but we need to regulate it as consumers. Like, we need to regulate our own behavior, and then that will regulate the industry naturally, because more and more we're taking the shortcut. We're looking for the convenience. Like, we're supporting developers continually that have the potential to make the best product because they have the most, available resources, but then they cut all the corners known to man to capitalize on profits, leaving gamers feeling, or consumers feeling, betrayed. And over time, because there isn't really other people or other companies that have attained that level of popularity within the space, they, rather than turning to alternative companies that actually have their ethos and their practice down, they're just lowering their expectations of the larger components and companies over time. So the quality is getting less and less in some places. And as I say, I'm hearing quite loud and clear that there needs to be some kind of renaissance and development that focuses on the metrics that actually empower the user rather than having them walk away feeling like their expectations have been sabotaged.
Yeah, you really nailed it there too, bro. Like, when all the big influential players, which capture the majority of the population's attention, of the population of gamers, right? If they start putting out stuff, if they start normalizing platforms and content as being mechanisms for messages, and don't get me wrong, right? Okay, I just want to just put this little caveat, sort of caveat in there, is that some people in the younger years, because I was a young person once, and I still kind of am, I'd like to think, 18 till I die, rock and roll. Not quite, but anyway, like I had charged ideas and ideals that I wanted to put out there, and then later on in life, I'm like going, oh man, I can't believe I thought like that. If I knew how influential, like when I first started teaching guitar, man, I was still a rock and roller, okay? And once I started hanging out with kids and discovering how easily impressed upon they are and how impressionable they are, that started tightening my game up as far as being like, I'm a role model whether I like it or not. I'm going to influence these kids' lives. If they see me doing something, like, is my public face and my private face lined up here? Because am I living two lives here? What do I want for my community? So when it comes to this conversation regulation, and that comes down to self-regulation too, bro.
Yeah, that's it.
That's right. And it's like, well, what's cool is that there are people in the industry largely that we might consider to be, say, elders of the village that have our best intentions and the actual evolution of the species at heart. In the sense of like, let's create entertaining stuff with, good nutrition in it that's helping to elevate the species and not degenerate it, because this is a big thing, guys.
At some point in your adult life, you recognize the fact that like you are responsible for everything that happens in your life, and a huge part of that comes down to what you think, what you say. Well, everything comes down to what you think, what you say, and what you do, because everything you say, every word is a spell. It's an opportunity to influence your own programming, and we need to become ever increasingly responsible of cultivating our own operating system by taking control of our own programming. And we do that by regulating out the language we use, the thoughts we have, and the actions that we take, right? And when we're just blindly allowing algorithms to dictate what information we pull into our programs, we've lost control already. And we're no longer harnessing our own thoughts and no longer staying true to our own sensory observations. We're now just taking in information that's been provided from third parties. And I think most of us noticed during the last 4 years campaign, like the illness campaign that we've all come through, that there is an ever increasing call to be ever more discerning of the information that and ever more self-regulating of information that you're being exposed to. Everybody's trying to sell you their own version of reality. I'm trying to start to sell people the idea of they need to try and empower their own. As long as you're looking to other people to advise, you're opening yourself up to suggestion. For example, you go to the doctor and you say, "What's wrong with me?" You've invited foreign programming into your paradigm. You go to a psychic and say, "What does my future hold?" You're inviting suggestion for programming that is external to potentially what you truly desire to do, or what you were put here to do. So again, games, profound platform for changing, for exposing people to language that can actually contribute to empowerment programming rather than limitation programming, and allowing people to become ever more responsible for picking and deciding how they navigate themselves through the world without having to constantly look to the group majority for insights and guidance. As again, like I truly believe that we are all supposed to be uniquely expressing ourselves here in the best way possible. Like I don't understand the idea of us all conforming to one way and feeding back the same conclusion. Like I think it's all about unique expression and unique exploration, and that's my mission with Violet Flame Studios, is to infuse these classical teachings of these alternative philosophical systems that were born in revolutionary Renaissance periods, that had a profound transformation on human consciousness, that was visible in the architecture of the time, visible in the literature of the time, and clear in the language of the time. I just feel like we've been given so much, or given the illusion of like so much freedom, that we've forgotten that we are really in essence pretty simple, and bringing ourselves back, calling ourselves back to our own unique experience, and trying to navigate the world in our own way. Like I think there's a huge call for this.
Yeah, and like I said before, and thank you, brother, it was well said. So many people are playing games, and from an esoteric point of view, all of these people are feeding back into the world's soul, or the human collective, if you want to use that kind of terminology. And so, if you've got 100 kids in the village all playing the same game, they're going to start in some way or another reflecting that experience in their day-to-day lives, and how they play out, and the decisions they make, how those decisions affect them, the people around them, and the community at large even. And then there's the even the bigger ripples, at a deeper level. But as far as the vehicle side of it goes, I mean, man, like this thing can be spun a couple of ways. It can be either used to push an ideal, or it can be used to enhance people's lives, stimulate imagination, improve cognitive faculties. Because, and I tried to put this on a post the other day, but it wouldn't let me for some reason. But you watch a movie for maybe like an hour and a half on average, right? You can get a lot of beautiful, wonderful messages and wisdoms from that. You're going to sit in front of a game from anywhere from 5 to 100 plus hours. That's a lot of regular exposure and reinforcement to themes and patterns, and and of course there's obviously screen hygiene and these types of things too. But the bottom line is that like the bro said, you essentially become what you pay attention to over time. It's going to fix your mind on. It's going to color the way you see the world, and it's going to be slow in a lot of ways. There's going to be things that creep up, and little things. It's like I came around to see the bro the other day, and the kids are growing up beyond. Like people like me, I see my other kids, the other kids grow up, and people who are there in the soup don't see it happening because they're there all the time. So these things are very subtle, very subtle. And so being conscious of, this is, like I said, this is part of your diet. Information, everything is information. The food, the water, the media you consume, the people you hang out with, and what you participate in as well.
Yeah, you are what you eat, and it extends beyond what you put into your mouth. Like what you hear, what you think, what you say, what you see. This is all part of what we eat, and it all influences the way that we perceive our reality. To summarize, like what Violet Flame Studio is attempting to do is to use nutritional escapism to lead people back to nutrition. Because right now, like, games are purely escapism that are supporting what I would consider pretty horrendous political agendas, whether they know it or not, whether they're normalizing war and violence, which we all obviously, like, we all have shadows to integrate. I'm not saying that, like, we can live a life of pure light here on earth. There's obviously an aspect of the darkness that you have to confront to learn and grow. And with our first product, Ascension, it plans to be exactly that, nutritional escapism. So imagine a sugar-coated medicine, a sugar-coated natural medicine where you have all the tropes of the shadow to attract the base pernicious desires of the seeker. So you've got violence, and you've got sex, and you've got mystery. But behind all that, you have profound cognitive exercise and transcendent philosophies that can only empower your thinking, that can only make you walk away feeling, hey, like the struggle was great and I've grown from it and I feel enlivened, So yeah, like for Violet Flame Studios and its primary products or its initial products, it's all about reinstating these traditional principles and baking into the gameplay mechanics the ability for you to exercise what I believe to be dramatically regressing cognitive faculties.
Yeah, so there's in this huge current epoch we're in, there's all of these civilizations that have risen and fallen for various reasons. Some of them are still around today in some way or another. But they have these treasure troves of wisdom where they had golden ages and they were doing really well. And people were living well, and they were, we have incredible art and music and whatever you want, feats of human endeavor that are still with us today after thousands and thousands and maybe tens of thousands and even hundreds of thousands maybe of years. But they were all inspired by things, by their pastimes, their recreational activities, by listening to myths and stories, by seeing in the artwork more than just a portrait of a noble. At some point that was actually, my understanding is that art was generally actually a teaching tool, or it was a historic, there was a lot more going on in art than just a picture of a dude, he was the boss. So, there's so much to draw on. There's all of these naturally baked in and embedded tuning forks of higher quality that we can be attuned to by simply exposing ourselves to these themes. Now, if we're having fun while we're doing it and engaged, and we're being challenged as well to rise above our current level, then we start seeing some progress as well. And and games are the current, the way that so many people are enjoying their spare time. And why not make good games that have good graphics and good this and good that and good story,
I'll leave you with a quote because we'll wrap up, because we could talk about this forever, let's face it. But I guess this is kind of at the core of my philosophy with Violet Flame Studios, is that there's a great quote by psychonaut and philosopher and botanist, ethnobotanist Terence McKenna, and he said, whenever society finds itself kind of wobbly, I can't remember the exact quote, but on the brink of a calamity, it looks back to the last sane moment it knew. And Terence McKenna believed that was the mushroom-dotted plains of Africa. I believe it was classical periods of Egyptian, probably the Egyptians, the ancient Egyptians, and the Greek. The wisdom of Hermes for me is probably the closest, most viable ethos and doctrine that can convert directly into a common game lore trope. You've got magic and mythos, and I really want to bring to the modern mind, as a solution to what I think is a modern nightmare, some classical dreams from what I believe was an inspired period that could shed some light on some of the modern dilemmas that we're facing today.
Yeah, well, great question. Hey, I just want to say, guys, in case the bro doesn't mention it, please please subscribe, please share. If you really like what we're talking about and you got any questions, if you think we need to be pulled up on something because we ain't quite got our facts straight, please put a comment in. And please go and check out the Violet Flame Studios
www.violetflamestudios.co.nz. We'll put all the links in the description below, and if there's any people that you think that we need to network with for a conversation immediately because we share the same insights or we share opposing insights, and would be good to have a debate with someone that is maybe on the other side of the spectrum, please highlight and let us know, because we're getting out there now, and we're going to start making noise. Peace. Thanks for your time, guys.